Hello and welcome to Concentric Circles, the show about 21st century creativity. My name is Jim Tremontana. Today I am enjoying the company of my good pals, Obi Fernandez, Vinny Fiorello, and Jono Diener. Fellas, how are you?
Great.
Excellent. Excellent.
Hot. Sorry about that, fellas, but feeling it this evening. It's nice to be around you handsome fellas, and see your shining faces.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, for the sake of, hang on, let's just get the party started. I'm sorry.
All right.
I just party time. This is moving. My soul is dancing right now. Yeah. Does anybody else know who that is?
You know, I think
that,
and I've heard of, I don't know.
Swell season?
Surf swells.
Today is a special day.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is going to be our last episode. Maybe not. Let's not be really super dramatic about it. For the time being, until he gets bored and then calls us back again and says, "Hey, I want to do some stuff."
Yep.
But Jono's all grown up. He's all grown up. He's got things to do. He's got responsibilities.
Leaving the nest.
That's what's happening, right?
So tell us a little more about that, Jono. How are things and what's been going on in your world?
So, A, thank you for the podcast because it's been wonderful. B, I've been essentially throwing tons of shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, and then a bunch of stuff started sticking. I was like, oh, during COVID times, I need to, ride that train or whatever, right? So in addition to launching a coffee company, I am now the copywriter for a company called Plant X. And it's this like massive plant-based, essentially it's like the Amazon of like all things plant-based. So everything from like weekly recipes and all this stuff to like things I'm handling, which are like big deal press releases and all these fun stock market things. It's super, super cool. But when it comes to like the company itself, I've been essentially like almost 100% vegan for the last like 15 years or so. Sometimes I have donuts because that's what I do when I'm on tour or at home now. Yeah, it's been cool. It's one of those things where I am, in addition to that, also doing comics and bands, so I'm getting my filter and doing a bit of a siphon thing. So for the mental health and sanity part.
Gotcha. How many bands are you in right now?
I think 500.
500? Pretty much every band has Jono in it in some way.
I mean, if you're a drummer ever, that's usually the case. You're like, how many are you in? 200-300.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He's the Mikey Erg of Flint.
Yeah, right. I remember when him and I were talking, like it was years ago before I realized who he was. He was filling in for someone. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually in a few bands. And he's like, yeah, me too. And then I like put together who he was. I'm like, you're in all the bands. Every single one you played in.
That's awesome.
Like a sidebar with Mikey Erg. There was one fest, like in Gainesville, there's fest, for those who don't know. 1 year, I think he played 16 sets.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Over the course of the weekend, though.
Over the course of the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but
yeah,
still, 16
a lot.
I mean, I'm going to tell you this, like, there'd be a point in time with like Less Than Jake where there'd be a new song. I'd be like, fuck, I got to listen to it like 35 times to like not shit the bed on the stage, like let alone like 16 sets, like throw one song at me. I'm like, fuck, I'm dead. Like,
yeah. Essentially five sets a day.
Yeah, man. Like it was crazy. So Mikey Erg, like what a
legend.
One of underkin of punk rock music and drumming. So
oh yeah.
But that makes sense, Jono. You also just recently got married. It's like that's a full-time. People don't realize that marriage is a full-time job.
Yeah. Well, so Ashley is she's going back to school for her master's and working full time as an accountant. So like both of us are just like on 10 all the time kind of thing, but it works out.
So you're leaving the podcast so you can keep the romance alive.
Yeah, she said, I will divorce you if you keep doing the podcast. It's the only reason.
Yeah, amazing. And then the other thing that's like really cooking that you have going on is, which is the newest development, is the Rootless Coffee stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, talk to us about Rootless Coffee.
So it came together very quickly, but essentially it was the first time where I was leaving a company, my friend was leaving a company, and we just started talking about coffee and like, what's a thing you've always wanted to do? Oh, this would be fun. And I started like blurting out these things on the phone, and I was like, I'm going to stop because normally I get paid to have ideas for things like this. So I was like, And then he was like, no, let's meet up and tell me your ideas. So what I didn't know was he was starting a full-time roaster, and I'm like marketing dude and all this other stuff. So once we started talking, almost everything was just like lined up perfectly. And he had like a good budget and all this stuff. So finally he was like, let's work together. You be the full-time creative person. I'll be the full-time like actual producer of the coffee, of all this other stuff. And just having worked at like several coffee places each, we finally put our heads together and we're like, let's make the least boring coffee company we can. And we started looking at like on our Instagram, all of our ads are coffee things because we're all coffee snobs and stuff. But now you're seeing like Death Wish Coffee. Their thing is like tons of caffeine. Bones Coffee, it's like tons of flavor. Like all of these things have their own thing. But very in line with the podcast, I was like, what if we did one that was like a creative based thing? So fortunately, like having the budget and having like my friends, I just reached out to all of my comic friends and I was like, you want to do a bag of coffee? We could pay you this much. And I was like really hesitant. We're like, I hope I'm not like bumming them out. And the response was, I've always wanted to do a bag of coffee. Yes. And then all of my favorite artists just started coming together and we're like, oh, this is going to be good. This is scary. So all of that started coming together. We're doing all of our planning. And keep in mind, right now we're in a photo studio in this like little like 20 by 20 square. And we have like all of our stuff in it. And then once in a while we'll get to like expand into our friend's photo studio. So we're not only crammed, but on the first day we did so many orders and none of us were expecting it because we were hitting on music, comics, like so many different worlds at the same time. And even like in Flint, there's like a whole network of churches and like all of these just people who like coffee. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, this is what it's like when you have something to sell that people want. Having been in bands and comics and all this other stuff where I'm like, all of those are subjective a bit, like for example, like Westbound Train, there's a type of music involved. So if you like music, you don't necessarily buy a record. Even if you like the music, you still might not buy the record. But like a product like coffee, you're like, I'll give it a shot. And we had no idea it was like that. So all these people started coming out of the woodwork and we're like, oh shit, this is going to be a bigger thing than we realized. So yeah, it's been a little over a month now and it's been so sweet. We're already starting to do more roast and getting into the fun, like wild creative side where we're sending coffee to our friends. We're like, make a weird video. So my friend Christina, who does like crazy, like special effects makeup and stuff. I was like, you do like zombie makeup, right? Just film yourself doing whatever you want, and we're going to send you a bag of coffee and use that. And then that's how we're going about it now. So we'll send people a bag of coffee and they do something with it.
There's something weird.
That's awesome. How about for obviously the vibe of the podcast, how creatives sort of like take ideas from ideation to like execution. There's probably people out there listening and it was like, okay, like you mentioned the word budget a few times. This guy's probably so like it probably takes a lot of money. I know you a little bit better and the budget is probably not what people think, especially since you're sharing space with the photo buddy in his photo studio.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how do you go from, hey, we've got this idea, I want to share, my friends' art, essentially, people that I really love. I want to share their art and put it on bags of coffee. And I'm also a coffee snob, so I know this tastes pretty good. How do you actually go about like making that happen? Like, what are the actual steps? You don't have to go step by step because I'm sure you want to keep some secrets to yourself.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
essentially, like, for the guy who's going to be like discouraged, like, well, I don't have a budget, but I want to do this. You don't have a budget either.
Yeah. So the scrappy punk rock kid in me
Exactly.
lucked out because my friend got an investment back from a separate company.
Sure.
And part of that included a roaster that he was already leasing. So there's this awesome company called Bellwether, and it's essentially like a refrigerator-sized roaster, but it's completely self-contained. So you don't need like weird ventilation or anything like that. It's like it runs with just an iPad. So all you do is type exactly what you need, and it's essentially idiot-proof. So you're able to put that anywhere without having to build like a massive thing. So he already had like several bags of coffee, like huge green coffee bean bags that are like 150 pounds each. And he was like, this is what I have. Everything in this room is ours. What do we do? And so on that end, he already had we had a head start, obviously, So if I was a brand new coffee roaster, I'd be like, invest in a little one, get a loan or do whatever, and make sure you have a business plan and kind of start going from there. But our thing was like, it was a branch off from a separate thing. So it was semi-established. And then as far as the creative side, I was like, okay, we need packaging, we need design. And so Justin Tordella, who worked on like Inevitable stuff too, he did our site, he did our logo, and like he's even like working on like cool little log books and stuff like that too. So I just started reaching out to all my friends who, again, all of us have been in bands. We have access to cool creatives. If I was like just random coffee guy, I wouldn't necessarily know like, here's a Rolodex of photographers and videographers. Like, I've always had to be scrappy with things. So when you put a business part to it, you could be like, hey, I could pay you this, but I'll just give you coffee whenever you want. And then now people are like, oh, this is a thing worth investing in, rather than like, oh, this is for a music video that'll go on Vimeo and no one will ever see it.
That's awesome. See, in my head, I feel like you and your partner walked into a room and you're like, we need some inspiration. And then this song played. Okay, I promise I won't keep doing that to you all night.
No,
I like the idea of us not actually recording anything. And you're just like, this is your punishment.
No, this is good. I think it's cool, and I think from our side, and all of us can attest to this, I think, like you want to be stoked for the people that you do stuff with that, when they start their own projects and start their own endeavors, you know what I mean? I think it's just like, I think it's rad, dude. It's like, you gotta eventually like let your passions take you where they're going to take you, and obviously you're passionate about the creative side of things, the marketing side of things, and coffee, and coffee is like such a niche market at the moment too,
yeah.
As long as coffee's been around and roasted, there's been people who are constantly on a quest for something else out of that coffee, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's like, I know a few people who do coffee. I've done coffee like for Less Than Jake before, and then for Paper and Plastic, and did our own blend. You go down to the roaster and you're like, here's this at 25%, 50%, and you go down the line and cup it, and you're like, ooh, this is good, this is the best, whatever, right? And you're on a hyper quest. If you love coffee, you're always on a hyper quest to find the better coffee or the bigger, stronger coffee of things, like for a long time where, I'd be on tour going, well, what great coffee shops are in town, Okay, here's these two, and go to each one and, have the two strongest coffees or the two best coffees. And I like a specific taste, taste profile. So I would always, linger around that stuff. But coffee, you're right in the respect that it's not punk rock music where you hope that it connects with somebody. Coffee already connects with people, man, and has since there's been coffee. So it's like, it's a good thing, It's like when you're making it, especially Flint, and it's not New York City where there's 300 coffee roasters, all vying for space and market share in a city. It's good that a small town, you have a few, 3 to 5. I don't know how many are there, but I would assume there's not, hundreds as in a big city. So
Exactly.
It's good to be able to get in there and have a pink bag instead of, a craft brown paper bag stamped or, with whatever on it.
For $90.
How many different blends do you guys do? Like, do you have like a set number that you've just been doing different artwork for, or is it like you have, just how many different varieties of coffee could we buy from your guys?
So right now we have 4 different kinds. We have a damn fine cup of coffee, which is our Twin Peaks nod. That's like our diner style like staple. We have dark, which is the dark coffee. We have darker, which we made as a joke because people kept being like, I wish the dark was darker. And we're like, we're going to do darker. And we literally handwrite it on a piece of tape and slap ER onto the end of dark. And then we have Berry Kiss, which is our like high-end, like single origin Ethiopian. So if you're like a super like third wave coffee snob like I am, that's like the jam. And then we have Out There, which is like a strange like Colombian one that has like citrus hints to it. We're also working on an espresso, and we're working on a decaf as well. So, and like what Vinny said too, like we have the advantage, like Flint is a very small town, and if you make like any kind of ripple, literally everyone like gets a whiff of it, So downtown, in the last like 15 years or so, it's completely changed. So there's like this one like mile of road that's like super nice, and it's either just bars or just coffee shops. And the thing that we thought was the funniest, like, so we're watching all of our friends have these coffee shops, and there's so many things they have to do with it, where like they have staff, they have the building, their supplies, blah, blah, blah. And then COVID hits, and everyone's like, how the hell do we navigate this? So we started like reading stuff where we're like, well, obviously e-commerce is like crushing everything. So we're like, what if we made it to where we don't have to have a coffee shop, but we could sell our coffee to all of the shops? And then we're like, holy shit, that's it. So that's kind of like our fix, where we're like, okay, so we could make this stuff and get it everywhere. So we're in like 2 of the biggest bars. The Flint Farmers Market sells like our retail bags and stuff. And then we're doing a collab. It's a place called Flint City Hard Cider. And they hit us up like the second day we existed, and they're like, hey, let's do a coffee hard cider. I'm like, absolutely. So on Devil's Night, we're doing like our first merch drop. We got like hats, beanies, shirts, and then we're selling the collab hard cider Rootless Coffee thing. So that's kind of our thing, where we're like, what makes us different is like Vinny mentioned too, like you see like the brown paper bag, like here's this craft coffee, like it's just like the hearty, like made in a big old roaster, like they always have that vibe. Ours is, we're going to get high-end coffee, but make you stop in a grocery store if you see it, because you're like, whoa, this is like wild artwork. Or it makes you stop on Instagram when you're scrolling by, And we're making it affordable. So like a 12-ounce bag of coffee is $15 instead of 20 or 25, and you're getting like really good stuff. And then the more we talked about it, we're like, let's throw 2-pound bags. Let's throw 5-pound bags. Like we're giving people all of these wild options and making it annoyingly accessible. That's kind of our vibe.
That's awesome, man.
That's cool. So what's like, so, okay, I have 2 things to kind of like ask. So what's the dream then? Like, let's say COVID wasn't happening. You've got Rootless, like rocking and rolling, doing its thing. Like you mentioned, like, okay, what's happening with the coffee shops sort of inspired this direct to consumer kind of vibe, but like at the end of the day, what's like the real dream for like Rootless? Like where do you want to, like, I feel like everybody who like wants to get into coffee secretly would love to just have their own coffee shop.
Yeah. So ours is actually like if we can get into like grocery stores everywhere and like do like that kind of version of it. And then, you know, obviously like having like a headquarters coffee shop thing would be rad. But like we're mostly focused on like just like the e-commerce and like wholesale side of things. So like it'd be cool to have our own branded thing and like, you know, essentially like a roasting space where we could have bands play. We could have like creatives do like art shows and cool stuff like that. And we want to make it to where it's just this fun, actual creative experience and not like all of these third wave coffee things are like, we always do stuff for the community and we always do like, we're all about creatives. Like people just use buzzwords all the time. And we're the first ones going like, we're going to do it. Like, hey, skater kids, here's some bags of coffee. Film yourselves like kick flipping over, you know, like we're able to do that because we don't care.
That's awesome.
That's pretty sweet.
Like a coffee food truck kind of thing. Does that exist? I feel like I'm living in a bubble and I don't even know much about the coffee culture. But do food truck style coffee shops exist that you can like drive around and do that whole thing? Like roast them there, serve the masses, that whole deal?
They don't roast it in a truck, Jim.
Whoa!
You know what? In New York City, before coffee, you know, culture was absolutely insane, there was a coffee truck that would drive around Manhattan called Mud.
Nice.
And it broke down in St. Mark's Place. It broke down there, and it stayed there for years, just a truck on the side of the road that served their version of great coffee, right? And it became like a staple of, you know, sort of snobby coffee drinkers and not that usual sort of paper cup blue, you know, from looks like a Greek god on it, you know what I mean? And it was crazy because that was the point, and it radiated out to other people to start their own coffee brand and coffee shops and get into roasting. Was just this crazy coffee truck that broke down on the side of the road in St. Mark's and stayed there.
Just stayed there. That's awesome.
Awesome. That's a good name too.
Mud, man.
Oh, my mud.
You know, it's
That
like,
is really nice.
it's like I think that the cool thing about what we're doing right now is celebrating a friend and compatriots win, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I find, a lot of friends, a lot of people that I've worked with, they hate it when other people win. Even it might be their friend, it might be their partner, they hate the win on other people. They want the win. And for me, man, as decades of being in business with other people and just doing whatever, and me and Obi had talked about it, I love the win on other people too. I love the win, but I love the win on other people. It looks great on other people when you can high five and go, you did it right and you did it awesome, and congratulations on moving to where it has to be. Because in the real world, you have some snarky bullshit on Instagram or Facebook. Tasted your coffee, was terrible, whatever, right? Like, you know, or they text it to their friend. Like, I'm going to be the first one, Obi, to Jim, say fucking congratulations, man, and good goddamn job.
Yeah. Bringing out the bell for that one.
The bell's back.
Bell has come back to celebrate Jono. Hell yeah, man. Well,
you know, it's weird though, man, because I find that there's a competitiveness even amongst creative people.
Yeah, definitely.
That I don't get it these days. Like, I did a podcast that was about toys, and it was last year, probably around December, and I talked a little bit about like I like when to collaborate, you know, to have collaborative projects with people. I like having a team to rally around, but I also like when people break out and they have their own like thing, and it does great. Yeah. Right? Like, and I find that creative people fall into the same trap as every other person that I know, and they don't take the time to go, hey, congratulations on the win.
Absolutely. But I think it's okay. I think this, it's also like a self-awareness issue too, because like I think it's okay to be like, oh man, like my buds are winning. This is awesome. I'm so stoked on what they're doing. And then get like inspired by it, you know?
Yeah.
And like a little bit of like competitive nature is always a good thing. Like I've always been a fan of like some, Vinny knows how competitive I can be, but like the reality is though, like I think it's a different sort of inspiration where you're like, you see people do things, and then just the ability to go and start a brand new company, whether it's a merch company, a coffee company, a toy company, like whatever it is, just requires so much courage, And like we do as creative people, we have to stop and be like, holy crap, like that requires so much courage. Like, way to go. I'm stoked you did that. But it's totally cool on the other side of that to be like, well, hey man, like my bud Jono did that. Like I could probably take a few steps here, like, and be inspired by it. And I think that's the thing. Like, we don't have the self. A lot of people sometimes, all of us find ourselves in this situation. I don't want to just generalize, but we don't have the self-awareness enough to kind of be like, hey, that's rad. I'm inspired by this. It makes me want to be better. Versus like, oh, that dude, he just scored a win. Like, screw that guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, those guys made a comic book and a record. Screw those guys. Because we've experienced those dudes too. Like, oh, like that's what's going on. Like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, it's like, dude, Jono came out with this rad idea for a coffee company. Sick. It actually looks awesome. Homeboy is winning. Like, I'm inspired to be a better entrepreneur because I see my friends around me making really awesome stuff,
Yeah.
You just showed me the receipt for the roaster. It's getting delivered in a couple days. He's going to start his own roasting.
Yeah.
He said if Jono could do it, I got plenty of space down in my basement.
I know. I cleared out space in my garage. Roaster's going right in there. I'm gonna.
I had to ask my family to leave to make room for the roaster.
Yeah, it's actually going to be called Dub Roots Coffee.
Trademark that.
Dubwise.
Exactly. But it's cool. So there was something. Were you going to say something? I'm sorry, Jono.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, like, when I was growing up, I will be the first to admit, like, I was jealous as hell of my friends when they were making it because I didn't know how to like process things. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like because I was choosing to be bitter or all this stuff, but then over time, I started like taking a step back, which I feel like all of us have done in our lives. And you start going, the fact that we're all doing this together, it doesn't matter if like band that used to open for me plays in arenas or whatever. Like it's not this like formula, stuff just happens. And the thing is, you should be stoked when you have a friend that plays in arenas. Like, that's a cool thing. So after like hitting my like super burnout bitter thing, like, I'm a decade or so ago, I completely flipped and I was like, no, it's always good to have friends and those things and not burn bridges because you're like, you say a dumb comment or something like that, And for me, like, especially like watching someone like Vinny, where it's like, Vinny, what do you do? Oh, here's 50 things, and they work, And like, I've, as a drummer and musician, always been like, Vinny had a label. I always wanted to do a label, like, all of these things like that. So it took a long time to realize, how do I make enough money to live, but also do the fun stuff, but also make the stuff actually happen and not just, because I was a talker and not a doer. Mm-hmm. And then I finally had to start like prioritizing my list of my life and being like, I can do this, and then I've hit burnout like 5 times in a major, really bad way. So then I got to the point where I was like, I need to like take out a little bit so the bowl's not like overflowing,
Yeah, you hit it on the head, man. Like, yeah, I think as humans, we talk a lot and we feel really productive because we talk to ourselves so much. And at the end of the day, we think we accomplished a ton. Or like you have those group of friends that you can talk to about anything and everything. And so you talk about it and you're like, oh dude, like emotionally I feel better because I talked this out, I accomplished so much, like I've taken some steps. But the reality is like, you're still standing in the same spot because, as opposed to, no, like I'm just going to do it and I don't need to talk to anybody about it. I need to talk to the people that actually matter to talk about it, and that are going to help me move the needle forward and get this done. Besides that, like, there's no need, but I think that's a really big misconception that, like, you said it earlier in how you were in your explanation, like, people just think things happen, and that's just like not the case. Like, there's so many people that I know that talk to me and they're just like, yeah, they throw this idea out, and they throw this idea out to me because what they're really saying is, hey, Obi, I need you to figure out how to actually make this happen.
Yep.
Because you're the guy, you know what I mean? And so then I'm like, cool, man, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I take the Fiorello approach. All right, yeah, I'm going to jump. It's good. I got to go. End of convo. But no, but as creative people, I think there's a lot of creative people that sit around, have great ideas, and people will never get to experience those ideas because they've spent so much time talking about them rather than actually doing them.
Executing.
What I did today, in fact, I went through all of my field notes, like small little notebooks, and I made it an Excel sheet of projects that I wrote down and haven't done yet, or I started them but I haven't finished them yet. And dude, it's crazy, right? But it's something that, like, for me, I have to, if I think about an idea, I'm already thinking about how I could do that idea. I don't marinate on the idea and then hang out with it. And sometimes that works really well to kind of hang on it and refine it. But for me, it was always, here's an idea, I'm moving forward with that idea, and then refine the idea as I'm already moving, instead of wait around and kind of do that. And that works perfectly. Sometimes that doesn't work perfectly in other cases, right? So I think that anyone that's wondering, it's like, I want to do something, it's really starting, man. Starting's half the battle. If you start, you're already there, man. Like, and then at that point in time, it's succeeding and your version of what succeeding is versus what failing and what your definition of failing is. And for me, like, I think that the minute that I start moving is a win. Doesn't matter if I sell 10 things, 20 things, 1,000 things, 100,000 things, 1,000,000 things. The win is already because here's the idea and I'm moving forward. And there's a force. It takes a lot more people to stop you than it is for you to start. So my opinion always was, I'm going to start. It's going to take a lot of motherfuckers to stop me once I start. And that's cool. And there's some people that have tried to start, to stop me, do X idea. But once that force is moving, man, it takes a lot of other people's energies for you to fuck up and stop or do whatever, right? So for me, anyone that's listening to this and wondering how and why and the thought of wanting to do their idea, it's just starting, man. It's just getting that motion going forward. Yeah. Because it's hard to stop once that motion's forward, man.
You guys ever get stuck in an idea though? Like, and by that I mean, like, I am so into like coming up like 50 steps ahead of a thing the second I think of it. So for example, I was talking to Matt from Smart Punk the other day, and I started accidentally pitching him a concept album that I was thinking about while I was talking, and I was like, I don't have time, like, what am I doing? But I'm like, I'm gonna write it down though. And then I feel guilt for a thing that I put like, I don't know if that's anxiety for you guys at all, but that's a big one for me where I'm like, too many ideas, don't finish them, feel bad, should do it. Like, that's a trap I fall in a lot.
Yeah, I think you have to prioritize. And I think someone who's been a big influence is Vinny for me on that, because, it's like, okay, we all make music, so that's got to fit somewhere. Like, that's never going to go away for any of us. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's touring full time or not touring full time, it doesn't matter. Like, making music is just never going to go away. So you accept that as a value, and you accept that as like just it's what's going to exist. But then there's other things, the concept album, or there's this business entity, or I think it's being able to live in the tension. Like for me, for example, owning a merchandising company, right? That's not my end game. That's not what I'm going to be doing 50 years from now. You know what I'm saying? Like that's totally not the case. But like, I tend to look at things as bridges right now. Like, hey, this is the journey. I'm on this bridge. And there's some people that I'm going to cross multiple bridges with. And there's some people that are only going to take this journey with me this much and this far. And I think it's just being able to live with that tension. So like, if I'm going to get to something, is it a priority? Does it make sense with where I'm headed? Does it make sense? The final destination has to always be in your head, right? So even like, and like I'm sure for you, like Rootless Coffee, this direct-to-consumer e-commerce concept, that's not the final destination. No one knows what the final destination is, but I'll tell you that it's not that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think you have to live in the tension of like, I know where I'm headed. This is where I am right now. This is a moment in time. But 6 months from now, 3 months from now, a year from now, like I might get to that concept album, but will that concept album help me get to that final destination? No, it's not going to. So therefore it's not getting done. I think that's the tension.
That takes a lot of wisdom and self-assurance, though, to do that kind of thing, though. That's amazing, though. Like, I think I'm more like Jono. I beat up on myself a lot for the things I'm not doing instead of celebrating the things that I am doing. And so that's great, I think, that you're able to do that right now, Jono, because I'm like you. I'll have like 50 ideas and I'll be working on one and be like, I should be working on the other guy. This one's so cool, but the other one's so much better. And so having the self-awareness to like prioritize is like a key. But like, how do you avoid burnout? Like, I know like Jono, you're staving off burnout. You're heading it off at the pass. But like for a guy like Vinny, what do you do? Like you're kind of like what we consider like the alpha male of productivity. Like how do you avoid your burnout?
You get burned out, man. You got to unplug. It's just simple stuff, man. Like, well, two things. I'll get back to what you're asking, but to just talk about for a sec what Jono said. Like, my fear never is the idea. Dude, I'll write down every idea, and maybe the time is now to try it. Maybe it's not, but I'll write down everything. My biggest fear always. What you did is a rookie mistake, not by the idea, but it's by telling someone your idea.
Yeah.
My problem is that I'm sitting down with a lot of people during the day and we're talking about a lot of other things and I'm giving a lot, like, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do these things. And I go, what are you doing, man? You just gave somebody, 10 things on a marketing plan. They're your friend or they're your friend's acquaintance, but man, you just gave it all away. Mm-hmm. And my problem is giving it all away because I'm genuinely excited about creating and talking with creatives, so I'll give it away. And I think that it's not, that the problem is not doing your idea, it's giving your idea away because you're not going to do it or you're not doing it now.
Yep.
And that's the thing. And to go back to what Jim said, dude, like I suffer. I talked to Obi about it. It's like I'm burnt, and then I have to slow down and I have to like narrow my bandwidth. And then I come back online a day or two later and that bandwidth is back open. But I'm keenly aware of when I'm starting to feel like unhealthy in what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And I have to close the hatch a little bit and I'll do the bare minimum of things to keep things going forward. And then when I feel better and mental health and physical health, I'll open it back up and I'll go at it full bore. But dude, no one is ever telling you or telling any creatives that shoot of productivity always has to stay opened and pinned. Like, dude, it's constant flux of 25%, 10%, 100%, 100%, 100%, comes down to 70, 50, 25, 10. Like, dude, it's a chute that continually opens and closes. Like, and I find that if I try to go full bore then I'm useless. All ideas are half baked, execution is half baked, and it's just lame. So that chute is constantly letting things in a stream of percentages of mental and physical health for myself. If not, dude, I would get, just for instance, it's that someone's asking to get paid for this when I asked them twice in my window of this time. And now that I've moved on and I go, okay, 2 days from now I could do it. But they're like, you have to do it right now. I'm like, dude, like I do it in 2 days from now and period. Right? Like there's I'm inflexible sometimes because I'm protecting my mental and physical health.
Mm.
Like, and that's just simple, man.
Yeah.
And like I feel like there's a lot of added, and I'm sure all of us feel this way too, where like you get hit up about a different thing while you're working on 3 other things, and then your brain just goes like, seriously? And then you're like, this person's reaching out for the first time in a week and being super, like, because I will have like, I have so many projects going on at the same time, and it's like that balancing act. But like, and Vinny, like when you were talking about like I unplug at this time, like I went to do that, and then I was like, the one day I was wanting to do that, I started getting emails that were like, oh, this is a deadline thing for tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, so I had to unplug I had to plug my unplug, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's like, for me, it's like finding out the balance, having a schedule, making sure everything actually gets done, and touching on the thing too, where it's like not only giving out too many ideas, but like vocalizing an idea and having to start that trajectory when you're not ready to do it yet, rather than write it down, wait for it to be calm and then start it, Yeah. Because like one of the big burnout times for me, I was drumming for early November, No Trigger, playing bass and singing in Baggage, drumming for Braided Veins. I was in another project called Unison with the guy from Braided Veins, and then I was doing studio drumming on the side. And that was just music. That wasn't a job. So like I was working in between that, and I literally was just like physically ill because I was like, I'm so excited to keep taking things on, and I don't know how to say no anymore. And that's the other thing where it's like learning to say no, or having like a hard, this is my stance on this thing. Like you're not being rude by doing it. You're like protecting yourself. Like humans can't operate like that 24/7, it's just unhealthy.
Yeah, I was going to say learning to say no is like one of the most crucial things you can do. Like, because you get hit up for stuff, and like, this happened to me like as recently as like 2 nights ago. Somebody hit me up. They're like, I want to do this thing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, dude, sorry. Like, I'm not the guy. And like, they're like, yeah, that's cool. Like, and you can tell they were like, kind of like, kind of bummed or whatever, but it's just like, I can't feel bad. Cause for me, like my family is like a big indicator. You know what I mean? Like, I need to make sure that like my kids and my wife are getting just as much of my bandwidth as everything else is getting. Right. And so like, I don't want to give people like my leftovers. Like, I don't want to give my family my leftovers. Like, that sucks. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's like, those are personal issues that, like me not growing up with a dad, like I want to make sure my kids don't get my leftovers. But at the same time in this conversation, the part that I think that we're not talking about, that we should talk about, is validation. As creative people, we all sort of need that kind of, we got to learn how to validate ourselves, because I think my personality, like I'm an internalizer. I actually don't really communicate my needs really well, right? But at the same time, I'm doing all this stuff. So doing actually validates a lot of my, like what I'm actually looking for. But for me, it's even like a friend brought this up to me today, who like I trust really dearly, like, and I took it one step further. Not only do I have to do stuff, I've got to do certain things. Like I've got to do like the impossible in order to feel like validated, which like is an awareness thing on my part, which at the end of the day is probably not super healthy on my part. But it's a part of how I get to be a songwriter, own a company, work on the inevitables, you know what I mean, and do the things that we do. Like there's just so many things that go on in our psyche, and at the end of the day, we just have to learn to be really aware and really honest with ourselves about it. And it actually, it's funny that we're having this conversation because it forced me to like go to certain people that are super close, like my wife included, to be like, hey, I got to figure out how to do this. And I need this. And I need help with like this part of like validating myself, because otherwise you can just keep doing and doing and doing and doing and doing and just lose yourself in all of that. You know what I mean? So I think that's a crucial thing that like, I think when people, and again, that idea, you don't realize that this idea that you have for a company, a coffee company, a comic book, a song, a band, you know, a novel can take you to this crazy place. And before you know it, who you were when you started that idea, like 2 years later, you're a completely different person. So I think it's important to have people around. And again, funny, full circle, go to our first episode ever, that you trust, that you can work on projects with. Because, dude, like working with Vinny, I know when Vinny's like feeling pissy and he's done, and I'm like, ooh, I am not sending a text at all. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to let homeboy, or if like I ask a question, I get a response a certain way, and I'm like, ooh, I know exactly. All right, have a good one, dude. I love you. It's all good, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not because I'm like afraid of like him dadding me or something like that, but because it's like, yo, like you just need space. You got to give people space. It's important. It's crucial.
And people deal with things in different ways too.
Absolutely.
Like my thing is like, I'm never angry. I'm just like on 10 stressed. And I'm like, I need to like just chill for the next like 10 minutes. And I'll like come back to like a normal temperature and be like, okay, you know, like, and like my wife knows that, like my friends know that, like when I was like working with other people, they're like, dude, you good? And I'm like, I will be. I know I will. Just leave me alone for a second, please.
I do that all the time. I'm like, I just need 10 minutes. And then, because you just feel it, you know it, you know what I mean? So it's crucial.
Oh, show.
Well, there it is, man.
Bam.
Boom.
So what's the next step there, Jono? What's the next chapter looking like? What parting words of wisdom would you like to leave the kids out there in podcast land?
Let me get my speech out.
Waiting for this.
I get my scroll. So, first of all, love you guys. Thank you for everything. We're obviously going to talk after the call, but I'm going to pretend like I'm breaking up with you because it makes it 10 times more sad, even though we're literally all working together and talking all day anyway.
There's a lot of work to get done, son.
Yeah. By the way, no, but I think as far as my concentric circles parting words, if you have an idea, at least pursue it. You can schedule things and use the adult way of navigating life by making sure all of your things are laid out. Prioritize things, whether you're using emotion or not. So, like, I don't have to be in 100 bands. Now I'm in 3 bands, you know? The band that was, like, my, like, number one passion thing where I was, like, turning down all this stuff is the thing I'm not even doing at all anymore. Because it's not that I've given up on something. I've just... my interest changed, you know, my passion changed. And I think you should always follow your passion, but consider the big picture along the way. So if you don't do that, you're just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff out. So stay creative, stay concentric.
Nice.
Singing loud out of the windows, sounding like sirens, going out like lions, a match to gas, and then a blast.